Hey there, and welcome to the ECM Podcast. I'm Friedrich Kunzmann, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this newest episode of the podcast and take you behind the scenes of new music on ECM Records. Today, Norwegian guitarist Jakob Young joins me, whose new recording, called Eventually, was just released. The album is Jakob's first trio date for ECM, and on it, he's accompanied by the acclaimed drummer Audun Kleive and bassist Mats Eilertsen. Jakob talks about what it took to finally commit to his first trio recording. He talks about his collaborators on the album, as well as the influence ECM stalwart Joan Christensen and other ECM recording artists had on him throughout the years. Hey Jakob, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you. I'm very excited about being here and getting to talk about the new album.
Eventually,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to look back at your past albums for ECM leading up to this album and how they kind of connect. Because looking back at your three prior recordings for ECM, it's easy to detect a common thread, I feel. A kind of signature, if you will, especially in your melodic approach. Your melodies tend to have a very lyrical quality, both melancholy and immediate. And on that level, eventually picks up right where you left off.
Yeah, well, thank you, I guess. I think that's a compliment. If you can detect the signature, I'm happy about that. I guess that's something that kind of happens naturally if you continue making music and you're trying to be personal in your writing. If you do it for long enough, eventually you're gonna have some traits that will be occurring and people will recognize. And yes, well, thank you. I think it's
more than a compliment. I just mean that there's something there that is very on the one hand, Jakob Young. It's a signature. I recognize this guitar player. I recognize this composer. But at the same time, those albums also have a lot of differences. They're not alike in many ways as well. But still, there's that connecting thread. And I feel like eventually, after Forever Young, picks up where Forever Young left off when it comes to that.
Well, I think you're right. I agree in a way. It's because it's all my writing, and I've used the same process, I guess, more or less. I mean, I'm not a great dictator when I'm writing music for a group. I tend to be very democratic in a way, or that's not the right word. It's more like open. I bring a tune and. I'm not sure exactly how I want it to sound.
So basically, you bring something that resembles maybe a lead sheet, a sheet of chords, melodic ideas, some leading elements.
Well, sometimes, most of the time, I have more than just a chord and a melody. I have a structure of the harmonic, maybe a pattern, maybe a arpeggiated sequence. Maybe bass, descending bass figures. Mm-hmm. So it's more than just chords and a melody.
Yeah.
I write out the voicings and so the tunes are kind of they're composed, but how we approach it in the studio, it's very much up to the musicians. If anyone has an idea, and actually I ask everyone how can we do this? Could we do this in a different way? Do you have an idea?
Yeah.
Trying to play with the competence of the musicians I play with, because I admire them a lot as musicians. And
so any input is welcome, basically.
Yes, I think any input is gonna make the music better. Basically, it's very selfish. I sound like I'm a great guy, but I'm just thinking about how can I trick these guys into making this mediocre tune sound great. That's my approach.
Well, I don't think you start out from a mediocre point, but I do agree that it's very cool and it's very interesting to let everyone else's voice in and have their say in how things develop. And I was just, my question, or basically what I said before, started out with what your different albums have in common, the signature, but there's a lot of contrast too. Your ECM debut, Evening Falls, was full of very dynamic quintet arrangements with kind of a chamber jazz character, I would say.
Yeah.
While your second record, Sideways, felt much darker, with Joan Christensen adding a stark counterpoint on drums. And on Forever Young, you partnered up with the Marcin Wasilewski trio and Tryggve for a set of quite catchy and warmer sounding tunes.
Right.
Where does Eventually fit in?
Well, to begin with, I think since it's a guitar trio album with just 3 instruments, guitar, bass, and drums, which is a classic format. And it's also a format that I've been hesitant to record with because I've been scared of that classic format basically, because I think it's a challenge, because as a guitar player you have to take the melodic and harmonic responsibility to a bigger extent than if you have a horn player or 2 horn players or a piano.
For sure.
And then by doing that, not filling every pause and every silence in the music, just doing the harmonic and melodic information while keeping it open. So that's hard to do that without everything turning out a little bit boring after 3 tunes,
Especially since a lot of great guitar players have done that before. You're always looking in your back as well, right? You always have these paragons who've impressed you.
Exactly, and it's there was not. I mean, we were very vocal about that actually with Mats and Audun, Mats Eilertsen and Audun Kleive, who are playing bass and drums on the recording. The first thing I said basically was I want to do this recording with you guys. I've been postponing making a guitar trio album for a long time with this classic format. And there's not really a point of doing it if we can't try to do something that we haven't really heard before. I mean, that sounds cheesy and sounds megalomaniac, but that was my idea. I mean, there's no point of making a trio album that sounds,
you don't want to copy something that someone's already done,
and then definitely it's going to sound not as good as what's been done before. So I had to be personal, had to be original, and we had to try to arrange and structure the music and the approach of how we play it. So that's why I was very happy to have these creative guys, and I could play ball with them, and they could help me achieve this, So because there's too much music out there. Why make another trio recording with guitar, bass, and drum, and it doesn't add anything new, Having said that, I mean that was the going point. So if we managed to do that, if we were successful or not, that's not up to me to say. But that was the goal in a way. And also, this is the first time I record stereo. I had 2 amps, so I had stereo guitar.
Yeah.
We actually had 4 microphones 2 on each amp. And then the sound-wise, the sonic landscape is a little bit different. We are able to spread the guitar a little bit more wider. So that was also like a technical thing that was different from what I've done before.
Talking about traditional or classic guitar trios, what are the guitar trios that you look up to, or the guitar trio records that are way up there in your opinion?
Oh, well, there's so many. That's why it's so hard to do something in this genre, you know. But of course, you have John Abercrombie's trios, Gateway with Dave Holland and Jack DeJohnette, and also his later one with Mark Johnson, Peter Erskine, and then and Metheny's debut album, Bright as Life, amazing. And also his, I think it's called Rejoicing.
Rejoicing.
When I was younger, I listened. Yeah, it's a beautiful album. Billy Higgins on drums, amazing. Bill Frisell's trio without bass with Joe
Lovano and Paul Motion.
Yeah, Paul Motion, beautiful. You know, so. And also, before that, I listened a lot to Grant Green, actually, which is more of a stretch from where what I sound like now, I guess. But
I feel like a lot of guitarists do go back to him. There's something about his horizontal lines that's very special, because he's not the typical harmonic thinker like Jim Hall was, for example. He goes more. He has a lot of horizontal movements. He goes melodiously. He builds his way through the changes.
And also he's very, very bluesy and also very beboppy, you know, because he's playing arpeggiated stuff. It's very inside bebop, his language. But it's also possible to like understand it. It's like it's not overly complex.
It's not cerebral in a way where you feel like it's pretentious. It's just straight ahead and hard bopping.
And it's swinging so hard, and it's really, but it's also very lyrical, and I just love that quality of his. And he made quite a few trio recordings, so where he hardly plays chords, and it's mostly single note playing. So that's also something I've been listening to, you know, like, and of course I studied with Jim Hall, so I listened a lot to Jim Hall and got to know him quite well for a few years. This was in 92, I guess, 91, 92, 93, something like that.
Yeah.
And I heard him a lot live with his quartet, sometimes with trio, with different players, and you know, he's been a huge influence on me as well. But you know, like, you take all these influences you have from these great players, and you try to incorporate it and then mix it together with your own stuff, and then hopefully something comes out that's you know.
Coming back to your collaborators, Mats Eilertsen has accompanied you for more than 2 decades now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he also appeared on your first album with ECM, as well as on Sideways. And Audun Kleive, on the other hand, has contributed drums on ECM before, but that was with Jon Balke and Matthias Eick.
Yeah.
However, this is your first collaboration with him on a studio recording.
Yes.
How did you two connect?
Well, to be honest, I was a little bit nervous about asking Audun Kleive to do this album, because I have only played with him a couple of times in a few concerts with other artists. I think it was with Bendik Hofseth once or twice, and it was just we never recorded, and we never really played in a group together or anything. So he's around 10 years older than I am, and I grew up when I was a kid listening to him when he was playing trio with Terry Rypdal. You know, this Chasers trio that's also on ECM, which is
for sure
amazing music, you know. And then he was a very young drummer, and the young fans at the time, we were looking up to Audun because he was just a little bit older than us, and then he was playing with this great trio, and So he was a little bit untouchable for me. So I had to man up a lot to call him. And then and we had a trial. We had a session in his house. He invited me to come, and he's just the sweetest guy, you know. So so we had a session. We just played for, I guess we played for half an hour, and he said, "Okay, let's do it," you know, because it felt natural right away. So that was.
It's funny that you mention that amount of respect, because I mean, you've played with Joan Christensen for a long time. In the past, you'd played with Joan Christensen.
Yeah.
So also, I think in the eyes of many, what you just said, untouchable. You know, and you've worked with quite a few renowned Norwegian drummers over the years, starting out with Per Oddvar Johansen in the late '90s, early 2000s. And most notably, of course, with Jon Christensen.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most recorded drummers on ECM.
Yeah.
And one of the most celebrated jazz drummers in general, I'd like to think, who kind of changed his approach and was always searching for new ways to express himself over the 50 years he recorded.
Yeah.
How does having Audun Kleive on drums in comparison to, for example, Christensen, change the dynamics in your groups or in the way your compositions develop and unfold?
Well, in a way, I mean, just to talk a little bit about Jon, because when I met him, I invited him to do some playing, and he's just very laid back and mellow and sweet guy, and he said, "Sure, I'll come and play," and we just became friends, and we played in Oslo. I just came back from 5 years in New York City, and he became sort of a little bit like a mentor for me, you know, in Oslo when I came back. So to have him in my group was almost like having a father figure in your group. It was it's not intimidating, you know, because we were good friends, you know. So but of course, everything you say, he was an amazing musician and celebrated around the world, and so the difference between having him and Audun, I would say. Both are, in my book, both are amazing musicians, and both are drummers who think of the whole outcome of the music. I mean, the wholeness of the performance. You know, more than their part. You know, so
of course, in their approach, they're also very different drummers. There's no question there, right?
Yeah.
I think it's common knowledge that, especially in his last 20 years, Jon was more of a deconstructive player who kind
Absolutely.
of, he was always setting some kind of counterpoint and not trying to follow the common pulse, but a different pulse.
Yeah, he didn't want to play what was there. He would play something that wasn't there, or he wouldn't play, or he would like do something contrasting to if he thought the music wasn't going somewhere or was stagnating, he would stop, or he would do something completely different, you know. Audun is he has that quality as well, but he's more in this recording, at least with me, he was like very much a team player, wanting everyone to sound as good as we could, you know. And also I think Audun's background maybe is coming more from rock in a way. I mean, when he played with Terje Rypdal, it was a big sound, you know, like, and he's very used to playing on reverb and playing on the sound effects, and making one hit on the snare sound for a long time and stuff like that. So playing with the sound, and also the studio and the sound system in the room. He's very good at that. And he has the biggest ears, you know, really great ears, you know. So when stuff happening in the music, if it's a groove wise or phrase wise or melodic ideas, I mean, he picks up on things and he plays something back and hits you with it, and so it's a constant communication, it's a constant conversation, I guess. when we're at our best, it feels like that. And that was what I wanted to do: make framework with my compositions, my tunes, to have our improvisation and our conversations in music to have a home to do it in and a framework.
Yeah,
you know.
You cover a whole lot of ground on this record, between ballads like the title track Eventually, funkier cuts like I Told You in October, and then folkier songs like Northbound, and there's a lot in between that. There's a lot of ground covered. Was the music all conceived with a trio or even this trio in mind, or is it stuff you kind of collected and sat on for a while? Or is it a mix of it?
Yeah, I guess it's a mix. It's really strange, this process of composing music for me. If I have a project that I need to compose to, then it can go quite fast, if I have a deadline. But this time I didn't really have a deadline. I just over the years, and also pretty much during the pandemic closed down 2 years, I've been writing music, and also not saying this is going to be for a quintet, or this is for a trio, this is for a duo or something. I mean, just writing music open, and then after I wrote, I guess, around 20 tunes, I brought everything to Audun and Mats, and I played everything on our first rehearsal. I played, and also the studio. I played from all the songs, and they helped me pick which one we're going to record.
They were your filter.
In a way, yeah. So I play, hey, what about this tune? And I played it, and they were listening, and then say, okay, next. Okay, we like this or we like that. So that was the process. So I had twice the amount of tunes, and then we ended up with these.
So they didn't like 50%. What's up with that? No, cool. It's a beautiful collection of tunes, I find, and I like how, though there's a large variety in styles, it kind of it's very much bound together by the fact that you guys play on it as a collective who make each track fit together. There's a bridge between the music. And you exclusively play the electric guitar this time around.
Yes.
While on your past recordings, you often switch between acoustic and electric. Was that a conscious decision or more of a coincidence?
That was a decision that was thought through. I wanted to do an electric album, like just keep one sound from the guitar. I mean, I had two different electric guitars actually. I play on one that's a little bit thinner. It's a
semi-hollow.
Yeah, semi-hollow 335 Yamaha. It's called and then I have one that's bigger. That's it's like archwood. Is it called? Isn't it?
Yeah,
like
arch top.
Arch top. It's more like a jazz guitar. So you can, if you listen carefully, you can hear when I play the arch top. Yeah, so I didn't want to have a steel string or nylon string track on this, just to keep the focus more on the sound and the unity of the trio.
Yeah, you do hear the difference between those guitars. I'm pretty sure on One for Louis you play an arch top.
Yeah.
And it breathes a little more. There's more air, and the ones where you use the semi-hollow, there's a bit more power behind it, a bit more even more roundness, maybe something like that.
That's true, and also on a few of the tunes, I did some alternate recording. Overdubs. Yeah, we recorded everything live, and then after the track was recorded, a few places I play some chords and sounds in the background. And that was mostly done on my half semi acoustic. What is it called? 335. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one thing you told me at one point was that Joan Christensen not only was like a mentor to you, but he actually kind of influenced the fact that you, or inspired the fact that you stayed in Norway after coming back from New York, because he's like, he told you, you know, everyone's over there, you can do your thing from here as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because I was actually planning on going back, and then we had a talk, and he said, why do you want to go back? I mean, you can make your dreams come true here as well, you know, like you can play music, you can play with good people, and you can do your thing here, maybe even easier or more accessible than in New York. This was in the 90s, end of the 90s, early
late 90s,
2000s, yeah. So I guess things have changed, you know, there as well. But I'm happy I stayed. He was a very wonderful and sweet person, and a beautiful musician, of course. As are Mats Eilertsen and Audun Kleive.
Jakob Young on his new trio record, Eventually. Thank you for joining me in the ECM Podcast. I'm Friedrich Kunzmann, and I look forward to present more new music from ECM very soon.